Hello and welcome to today's episode, which deals with corporate strategy. Let's first understand the term corporate strategy. The overall scope and direction of a corporation and the way in which its various businesses operations work together to achieve particular goals. Corporate strategy is about enabling an organization to achieve and sustain superior performance by overcoming business challenges, understanding industry trends, and linking tangible action to a clear corporation vision. Whether it's pursuing growth, delivering innovation, driving efficiencies, or improving profitability, companies need strategies they can implement and deliver to drive successful outcomes. Students, you can choose to be corporate strategy advisor one day and help companies in all industries to make the right decision to allow them to take advantage of opportunities while minimizing risks. Combining world-class industry research with decade of hands-on experience. Well, before we move any forward, I would like to give a quick introduction about myself. I am Ms. Pallavi Mohan, currently working in an MNC, have worked over 16 years in management, marketing, strategy, and various other departments. Today, we will take a broad overview of the concept corporate strategy. Let's first understand few individual terms which will make it easy for you to comprehend this episode. The terms are corporation, strategy, strategic, management, planning, strategic management. Corporation. A corporation is a separate legal entity that has been incorporated either directly through legislation or through a registration process established by law. Incorporate entities have legal rights and liabilities that are distinct from their employees and shareholders and may conduct business as either a profit-seeking business or not-for-profit business. Strategy. Strategy is a high-level plan to achieve one or more goals under conditions of uncertainty. Strategy is important because the resources available to achieve these goals are usually limited. Strategic planning. Strategic planning is an organization's process of defining its strategy or direction and making decision on allocating its resources to pursue this strategy. Management. Management in business and organization is the function that coordinates the efforts of people to accomplish goals and objectives using available resources efficiently and effectively. Management comprises planning, organizing, staffing, leading or directing, and controlling an organization or initiative to accomplish a goal. Resourcing encompasses the deployment and manipulation of human resources, financial resources, technological resources, natural resources. Management is also an academic discipline, a social science whose objective of study is a social organization. Planning. Planning is the process of thinking about and organizing the activities required to achieve a desired goal. Planning involves the creation and maintenance of a plan. As such, planning is a fundamental property of intelligent behavior. This thought process is essential to the creation and refinement of a plan or integration of it with other plans. That is combines forecasting of developments with the preparation of scenarios of how to react to them. Strategic management. Strategic management involves the formulation and implementation of the major goals and initiatives taken by a company's top management on behalf of owners based on consideration of resources and an assessment of the internal and external environment in which the organization competes. Strategic management provides overall direction to the enterprise and involves specifying the organization's objectives, developing policies and plans designed to achieve these objectives, and then allocating resources to implement the plans. Academics and practicing managers have developed numerous models and frameworks to assist in strategic decision making in the context of complex environments and competitive dynamics. Strategic management is not static in nature. The model often includes a feedback loop to monitor execution and inform the next round of planning. Harvard professor Michael Porter identifies three principal underlying strategy: creating a unique and valuable market position, making trade-offs by choosing what not to do, and creating fit by aligning company activities with one another to support the chosen strategy. Dr. Vladimir Kevit defines strategy as a system of finding, formulating, and developing a doctrine that will ensure long-term success if followed faithfully. Corporate strategy involves answering a key question from a portfolio perspective. What business should we be in? Business strategy involves answering the question, how shall we compete in this business? In management theory and practice, a further distinction is often made between strategic management and operational management. Operational management is considered primarily with improving efficiency and controlling cost within the boundaries set by organization's strategy. Corporate strategy moves around strategic management, which involves the formulation and implementation of the major goals and initiatives taken by a company's top management on behalf of owners based on consideration of resources and an assessment of the internal and external environment in which the organization competes. Strategy is defined as the determination of the basic long-term goals of an enterprise and the adoption of courses of action and the allocation of resources necessary for carrying out these goals. Strategies are established to set direction, focus efforts, define or clarify the organization, and provide consistency or guidance in response to the environment. Strategic management involves the related concept of strategic planning and strategic thinking. Strategic planning is analytical in nature and refers to formalized procedure to produce the data and analysis used as input for strategic thinking, which synthesizes the data resulting in the strategy. Strategic planning may also refer to control mechanisms used to implement the strategy once it is determined. In other words, strategic planning happens around the strategic thinking or strategy making activity. Strategic management is often described as involving two major processes: formulation and implementation of strategy. While described sequentially below, in practice the two processes are iterative and each provides input for the other. Formulation of corporate strategy. Formulation of corporate strategy involves analyzing the environment in which the organization operates, then making a series of strategic decisions about how the organization will compete. Formulation ends with a series of goals or objectives and measures for the organization to pursue. Environmental analysis includes the remote external environment, includes the political, economic, social, technological and regulatory landscape, industry environment such as the competitive behavior of rival organization, the bargaining power of buyers/customers and suppliers, threat from new entrant to the industry, and the ability of buyers to substitute products. Internal environment regarding the strengths and weaknesses of the organization's resources, that is, its people, processes and IT systems. Strategic decisions are based on insights from the environmental assessment and are responses to strategic questions about how the organization will compete, such as what is the organization's business, who is the target customer for the organization's products and services, where are the customers and how do they buy, what is considered value to the customers, which businesses, products and services should be included or excluded from the portfolio of offerings. What is the geographic scope of the business? What differentiates the company from its competitors in the eyes of customers and other stakeholders? Which skills and resources should be developed within the firm? What are the important opportunities and risks for the organization? How can the firm grow through both its basic business and new business? How can the firm generate more value for investors? The answer to these and many other strategic questions result in the organization's strategy and a series of specific short-term and long-term goals or objectives and related measures. Implementation. The second major process of the strategic management in a corporate environment is implementation, which involves decision regarding how the organization resources, that is, people, processes, and IT system, will be aligned and mobilized towards the objectives. Implementation results in how the organization's resources are structured, such as by product or service or geography, leadership arrangements, communication, incentives, and monitoring mechanisms to track progress towards objectives, among others. Running the day-to-day operations of the business is often referred to as operations management, or specific term for key departments or functions such as logistics management or marketing management, which takes over once strategic management decisions are implemented. Strategic thinking involves the generation and application of unique business insight to opportunities intended to create competitive advantage for a firm or organization. It involves challenging the assumptions underlying the organization's strategy and value proposition. Mintzberg wrote in 1994 that it is more about synthesis, that is, connecting the dots, than analysis, finding the dots. It is about capturing what the manager learns from all resources, both the soft insights from his or her personal experience and the experience of others throughout the organization and the hard data from market research and the like, and then synthesizing that learning into a vision of the direction that the business should pursue. Mintzberg argued that strategic thinking is the critical part of formulating strategy, more so than strategic planning exercises. General Andre Beaufry wrote in 1963 that strategic thinking is a mental process at once abstract and rational, which must be capable of synthesizing both psychological and material data. The strategies must have a great capacity for both analysis and synthesis. Analysis is necessary to assemble the data on which he makes his diagnosis, synthesis in order to produce from these data the diagnosis itself, and the diagnosis in fact amounts to a choice between alternative course of action. Will Melcaster argued that while much research and creative thought has been devoted to generating alternative strategies, too little work has been done on what influences the quality of strategic decision making and the effectiveness with which strategies are implemented. For instance, in retrospect, it can be seen that the financial crisis of 2008 and 9 could have been avoided if the banks had paid more attention to the risks associated with their investment. But how should banks change the way they make decisions to improve the quality of their decision in the future? Melcaster's managing focus forces framework addresses this issue by identifying 11 forces that should be incorporated into the processes of decision making and strategic implementation. The 11 forces are time, opposing forces, politics, perception, holistic effects, adding value, incentives, learning capabilities, opportunity cost, risk, and styles. Strategic planning is analytical in nature and refers to formalized procedure to produce the data and analysis used as inputs for strategic thinking, which synthesizes the data resulting in the strategy. Strategic planning may also refer to control mechanisms used to implement the strategy once it is determined. In other words, strategic planning happens around the strategy formation process. Formulation and implementation of strategy have resulted in a variety of analytical frameworks. The difficulty of fully comprehending and responding to the complex issues faced by an organization has led to a proliferation of such frameworks. Each attempts to organize a number of issues and make them more readily understandable. Framework for analysis, a SWOT analysis, with its 4 elements in a 2x2 matrix. Michael Porter wrote in 1980, the formulation of competitive strategy includes consideration of 4 key elements: company strengths and weaknesses, personal value of the key implementers, that is management and the board, industry opportunities and threats, and broader societal expectations. The first 2 elements relate to factors internal to the company, that is, the internal environment, while the later 2 relate to factors external to the company, that is, external environment. Examples of frameworks that addresses the 4 elements described above include external environment. Pest analysis or steep analysis is a framework used to examine the remote external environmental factors that can affect the organization, such as political, economic, social, demographic, and government regulations. Industry environment. The Porter 5 forces analysis framework helps to determine the competitive rivalry and therefore attractiveness of a market. It is used to help determine the portfolio of offering the organization will provide and in which market. Relationship of internal and external environment. One of the most basic and widely used frameworks is the SWOT analysis, which examines both internal elements of the organization, which are strengths and weaknesses, and external elements, which are opportunities and threats. It helps examine the organization's resources in the context of its environment. Determining objectives and measures. The balanced scorecard attempts to measure the performance of an organization from the perspective of various stakeholders. While often used in a performance management or operational management context, the balanced scorecard is also valuable to strategic management in helping to define and maintain competitive advantage. Many other frameworks are commonly used in management and taught in business schools. Various strategic approaches used across industries themes have risen over the years. These includes the shift from product driven demand to customer or market driven demand described above, the increased use of self-service approaches to lower cost, changes in the value chain or corporate structure due to globalization, example offshoring of production and assembly, and the internet. One theme in strategic competition has been the trend towards self-services, often enabled by technology, where the customer takes on a role previously preferred by a worker to lower the price. Examples include ATM machine to obtain cash rather via bank teller. Live examples we see in our Indian malls. Self-service at a gas pump rather than help from an attendant, mainly seen in countries like USA, where the cost of gas or petrol is less if you go for self-service. Retail internet orders input by the customer rather than a retail clerk, such as online book sales. Mass-produced ready-to-assemble furniture transported by the customer and self-checkout at the grocery stores. Globalization and the virtual firm. One definition of globalization refers to the integration of economies due to technology and supply chain processes innovation. Companies are no longer required to vertically integrate it, that is, designing, producing, assembling, and sell their products. In other words, the value chain for a company's product may no longer be entirely within one firm. Several entities comprising a virtual firm may exist to fulfill the customer requirement. For example, some companies have chosen to outsource production to third parties, retaining only design and sales functions inside their organization. Internet and information availability. The Internet has dramatically empowered consumers and enabled buyers and sellers to come together with drastically reduced transactions and intermediary costs, creating much more robust marketplaces for the purchase and sales of goods and services. Examples include online auction sites, internet dating services, and internet booksellers. In many industries, the internet has dramatically altered the competitive landscape. Services that used to be provided within one entity, example, a car dealership providing financing and pricing information, are now provided by a third party. Author Philip Evans said in 2013 that networks are challenging traditional hierarchies. Value chains may also be breaking up, deconstructing, where information aspects can be separated from functional activity. Data that is readily available for free or very low cost makes it harder for information-based, vertically integrated businesses to remain intact. Evans said, "The basic story here is that what used to be vertically integrated, oligopolistic competition amongst essentially similar kinds of competitors is evolving by one means or another from a vertical structure to a horizontal one." Why is that happening? It's happening because transaction costs are plummeting and because scale is polarizing. The plummeting of transaction cost weakens the glue that holds value chains together and allows them to separate. He used Wikipedia as an example of a network that has challenged the traditional encyclopedia business model. Evans predicts the emergence of a new form of industrial organization called a stake, analogous to a technology stake in which competitors rely on a common platform of inputs, services, or information, essentially layering the remaining competing parts of their value chain on top of this common platform. Michael Hammer and James Campy felt that these resources needed to be restructured. In a process that they labeled re-engineering, firms reorganized their assets around whole processes rather than tasks. In this way, a team of people saw a project through from inception to completion. This avoided functional silos where isolated departments seldom talked to each other. It also eliminated waste due to functional overlap and interdepartmental communications. In 1989, Richard Lester and the research at the MIT Industrial Performance Center identified 7 best practices and concluded that firms must accelerate the shift away from the mass production of low-cost standardized products. The 7 areas of best practices were simultaneously continuous improvement in cost, quality, services, and product innovation, breaking down organizational barriers between departments, eliminating layers of management, creating flattered organizational hierarchies, closer relationships with customers and suppliers, intelligent use of new technology, global focus, improving human resource skills. The search for best practices is also called benchmarking. This involves determining where you need to improve, finding an organization that is exceptional in this area, then studying the company and applying its best practices in your firm. Other perspectives on strategy: active strategy management required active information gathering and active problem solving. In the early days of Hewlett-Packard, Dave Packard and Bill Hewlett devised an active management style that they called management by walking around, MBWA. Senior HP managers were seldom at their desks. They spent most of their time visiting employees, customers and suppliers. This direct contact with key people providing them with solid grounding from which viable strategies could be crafted. In 2010, IBM released a study summarizing 3 conclusions of 1,500 CEOs around the world. 1. Complexity is escalating. Enterprises are not equipped to cope with this complexity. Third, creativity is now the single most important leadership competency. IBM said that it is needed in all aspects of leadership, including strategic thinking and planning. Similarly, Macau argued that over-reliance on any particular approach to strategy is dangerous, and that multiple methods can be used to combine the creativity and analytics to create an approach to shaping the future. That is difficult to copy. The basic premise is that a strategy should not be judged by internal company factors, but by the way customers see it relative to the competition. Crafting and implementing a strategy involves creating a position in the mind of collective consumer. Several techniques enabled the practical use of positioning theory. Perceptual mapping, for example, creates visual displays of the relationship between positions. Multidimensional scaling, discriminant analysis, factor analysis, and conjoint analysis are mathematical techniques used to determine the most relevant characteristics called dimensions or factors upon which positions should be based. Preference regression can be used to determine vectors of ideal position, and cluster analysis can identify clusters of position. In 1992, J. Berney saw strategy as assembling the optimum mix of resources, including human technology and suppliers, and then configuring them in unique and sustainable ways. With this, we cover corporate strategy. That is all for today. Hope you have understood about corporate strategy. We'll see you again with yet another interesting topic. Till then, take care. Bye.